about community safety. But at least they've got a position. Labor don't, and by next Christmas they won't either.
Order. Honourable David Parker.
Mr Speaker, this debate marks the end to the second year of the 50th Parliament of New Zealand. And I want to put on record that I think we should reflect occasionally that a record of 50 parliaments unbroken by revolution or war is very unusual in the world. Europe haven't done it, neither of South America, Africa or Asia. They can't match this proud record. And it doesn't happen by itself. So I'd like to begin by thanking, on behalf of all of my colleagues in the Labour Party, all of the people in and around Parliament who make this place work. You all contribute to our parliamentary democracy and to the important work that we do to represent the people who elect us, who put us in this place. Thank you, Mr Speaker, and your assistants for your efforts to ensure the place runs fairly, freedom of speech and the opposition fulfilling its role to hold the government to account while enabling the business of government to be done. To your staff, the Clerk of the House, Select Committee staff, library researchers, messengers, the cleaners who work for us in the middle of the night, the Travel Office, Copperfields, IT support, security, visits and ceremonial, Hansard and others in parliamentary service and the Office of the Clerk. Thank you all. Can I thank the Fourth Estate, who play a fundamental role in reporting news and exposing failure. It's obvious to all of us who work here that the gallery under increasing pressure with social media, compressed filing deadlines and fewer numbers. You do it with good humour and you provide an essential ingredient to our functioning democracy. We have to record that your efforts were undermined this year by inappropriate release of email and security records to the Henry inquiry that was looking into the leaking of the GCSB report. But I hope you've been assured by the Privileges Committee report that we in Parliament are determined to protect your rights. To our Labour staffers in Wellington and constituency offices throughout the country, special thanks for a good year of hard work. Rest assured there'll be plenty more work next year. I'd like to thank all of the families of MPs on all sides of the House who tolerate long absences and stresses caused by parliamentary life. It's not easy for our families. I take the opportunity to mark the sad passing of our colleague, the Honourable Parakura Horomia, and to fondly remember the memories he's left with us. To my caucus colleagues, and David Cunliffe in particular, I express my sincere thanks and my admiration for how you all go about your work, tirelessly representing the interests of those who elect us and who rely upon us. I know this will continue for us long after the House rises, but I wish everyone a happy Christmas and a well-deserved break. Mr Speaker, turning to the year, the New Zealand Labour Party ends the year reinvigorated. We've a new leadership team in place after a modern, outward-looking process that made democracy and the Labour Party stronger. We had a stonking victory in Christchurch East. National threw all their money at it, but were comprehensively thrashed. Why? Because National stopped listening. After 3 years of delay following the earthquakes, the people of Christchurch said enough, and they sent a message to National. 2-1 in favour of Labour. Our membership is up 80% this year. Our caucus and our party are united, and the polling is up. For some months now, the polls have Labour and our likely allies neck and neck with National. Now, National try to pretend otherwise, but as in with other things, they are out of touch and in the past, because it's MMP, Mr Joyce, not first past the post. And it will be the will of the people who decides the outcome of the next election, and whatever election outcome they determine will be legitimate, contrary to the claims of the National Party. National Party have spent so much of this year trying to assert that MMP governments that don't include them are somehow illegitimate or wrong. It's just nonsense. None of the MMP governments until perhaps this one have actually stopped early in the term because of a failure of their coalition. It gives me no pleasure to say that this current coalition arrangements are the most unsavoury of any MMP parliaments. Propped up by Peter Dunn, forced to resign after leaking a secure document into breaches of the law by the Government Security Communications Bureau. Even worse, John Banks on trial for electoral fraud is another vote that props up this government. He follows on from a long history and act that is disreputable. David Garrett, the man who stole a passport of a dead baby and having railed against name suppression and short sentences, had both. Donahuata Awatiri, jailed for fraud. Jailed for fraud. Rodney Hyde, busted for perks after being the perk buster. Then we had Don Brash taking over the ACT Party from outside of the ACT Party and then shoehorned John Banks, shoehorned into Parliament by the Prime Minister John Key after the Tea Party. Those two parties are disreputable. The Maori Party is not disreputable. They are not disreputable, but they are a shadow of their former selves. They are searching around for a celebrity candidate because they're at 1% in the polls. In terms of National's own performance, the central economic plank for them this year was a shambles. Their asset sales program tanked. The energy companies are all trading at less they were listed for, and even then they took $1 billion less in receipts than they predicted. They ended up selling them to 2% of New Zealand's population, and they caused a citizens-initiated referendum because so many New Zealanders are annoyed that the National Party is not listening to them. More than 300,000 people voted for the referendum. More than 1 million people have voted in the referendum, and the National Party still says they'll ignore them. You look at their other failures. Not listening around the GCSB, not listening around... We in the end had the Prime Minister coming and say, look, the opposition parties are right. No longer will the arm of the state need a warrant in order to snoop upon New Zealanders, but you can rely upon me, Mr Key, to trust me. I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to let them do it without a warrant, even though the law that the national government passed allows them to do exactly that. Not listening and out of touch. Solid Energy, completely mismanaged by Bill English and Tony Ryle, turned an export award-winning company into something that is worthless. A basket case, lost hundreds of millions of dollars by their reckless oversight of that company. They told them to invest more in coal, to borrow more money, to pay higher dividends, and it all ended in tears. Mr Speaker, this failing National Party is out for the big end of town. Everyone's seen it this year. Corporate welfare for Rio Tinto, $30 million without even a jobs guarantee. A special deal for Sky City, criticised by the Auditor-General as being inappropriate because only they had the inside running. What happens to ordinary New Zealanders in the meantime? Well, let's look at housing. One of the areas of abject failure of policy by the government because of their tax and housing settings. This year, the average Auckland house price has gone up by $85,000. $85,000, that's $677 a week as housing costs escalate beyond the reach of most New Zealanders in Auckland. And I say most New Zealanders because in respect of most young New Zealanders, they can't afford to buy a house. Home ownership rates in Auckland have dropped under 60%. We now have house prices ballooning to 19 years of median income. No wonder people are fed up with the government on housing. We've got inequality higher than it's ever been under this government. Just today, the Herald reported that in South Auckland, incomes are down by 16% in real terms, 17% in real terms in the neighbouring suburbs, while those in the richer suburbs prosper. It is not right. And in this country, New Zealanders are rightly asking themselves, do they want to live in a country of increasing inequality? Mr Speaker, it is increasing. It is increasing, Mr English. Your head's in the clouds because you're just looking after the interests of Chorus or Rio Tinto, not looking after the interests of everyday New Zealanders. Mr Speaker, some congratulations should go to Fonterra and for some of our exporters. They are doing well because the Labor government created Fonterra and then breathed life into it through the free trade agreement with China negotiated with, by the Honourable Phil Goff. Mr. Speaker, other people seem to have a bit more latitude than you're giving me. Mr. Speaker, I will end by saying Merry Christmas. I hope everyone has a good break. We're really looking forward to election year, and we're going to deliver for ordinary New Zealanders.
Mr. Speaker.
Ollie Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. E mihi ana ki ngā mema o te whare pāremata, tēnā koutou katoa.